All right, everybody. Well, welcome to another episode of Call Me Mr. Broadstreet. Interesting topic. Wanted to go ahead and bring Kit along here, obviously, get her take on it. So, welcome back, Kit. Just wanted to do a little bit of a kind of an introduction what we're sort of covering today. Basically, with the Man on the Run documentary and book coming out, Beatles Anthology, of course, coming out, Power to the People coming out. Now, at least speaking for myself only, look, we're not looking to really offend anybody. Everybody has the right to their opinions. We're not looking to downplay anybody, any fans out there. We all can agree to disagree. But sort of an interesting topic as far as marketing to, the hardcore fans versus marketing to the newer fans, the more casual fans, and what the content, contains. Is there enough to appeal to both, and kind of a discussion on that and going from there as well. So our takes. So Kit, welcome back. And you want to chime in, take it away. We'll go ahead and go back and forth.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Ed, for having me back on. Always love to be on your show. And boy, this is quite a topic because I posted something, a link to a review of Man on the Run, and boy, did that generate a lot of conversation about who is this documentary meant for. And who is it trying to appeal to? Are longtime fans being ignored? It was quite a debate, and I think it really is kind of similar to what we've been hearing about Anthology and the one-to-one set, and I think it's a question of who are they trying to appeal to? And are Apple and other companies really, taking hardcore fans into consideration? And this is such a delicate balance. I've been thinking about this because I understand that Apple film distribution, they're looking to make money. They're not in this just for their health.
Yep.
And so they want to appeal to as broad an audience as possible. And I get that. But I still think, though, it's possible to, throw us longtime fans a bone and at least include, I understand the whole thing can't be about, B-sides and things like that. I mean, I know that.
Wait, we're not getting something on just Morse, Moose, and Grey Goose. As much as I love that track, we're not getting a documentary on that one. Oh man, that's it. I'm canceling everything.
Exactly. That'd be great. But it's let's just say it's a niche market.
Of course, yeah.
And I get that. I totally get that. But I still think, though, the original Anthology, I think did it's not flawless, but I think they did a good job of both talking, having to go through the whole story. And as somebody put it on my Facebook page, I can't remember who, the bullet points of their story. But us longtime fans got, really thrown a bone because it was coming from the mouths of Paul, George, and Ringo. And so they were, and John in archival footage,
of course, yeah.
And so they were able to, I think, give us enough information. It's like, this is something, the madness of Beatlemania, for example. I mean, the height of it, the screaming, the mobs, all that stuff. Sure, we've heard all that before, but this time we were hearing it from their mouths and from the inside, and that to me made the documentary worth it. That, okay, we can hear about the stuff we've heard before, but then they're going to add perspective to it. So I think that did a fairly decent job of balancing the two audiences. Yeah. Now, we haven't seen Man on the Run yet. Let's make that crystal clear.
No insider knowledge from anybody.
Nope, only that review that we saw. Are there going to be moments like that? I hope so, because that would help to get through the bullet points of the film. So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, yeah, kind of thinking on it, and this is our really first time, discussing it. And again, I know other folks have done other videos similar to this. I haven't seen any of them. I'm
Mhm.
putting my own spin on it before I go in. Go watch, those fellow podcasters who I'm sure doing an amazing job. But all that out of the way, here's my thought process. Well, first of all, Beatles Anthology. I'm going to go with that one. Yeah, it was great, especially getting the CDs of material back
Right.
then, back in the '90s, and now we're getting the upgraded CDs. Of course, yes, I'm going to purchase at least a CD edition. Seeing it on streaming, I want a physical product. That's been my, carrying card, whatever you want, rallying cry, whatever you want to call it. I would love to see that happen. Along with the book, hopefully there's some extra things. Man on the Run. The reason I sort of commented the way I did, to expand on it a little bit. And I enjoyed Wingspan. I definitely enjoyed Wingspan. I reviewed it on my channel. I think we've all reviewed it on our individual and group channels and everything like that. It's enjoyable. It is very much just the highlights. It is very much about Paul and Linda. What I'm kind of hoping for is, okay, it's going to introduce it to a new audience, as you said. It's casual fans. I get that. People who may never have heard the story. You can go over the so-called bullet points, but I think, again, yeah, dig in a little bit deeper. Let's get some stuff like with Lawrence Juber, with his book, Guitar with Wings. Went into some really good detail about that later time period when he joined. Something along that. It doesn't have to be every track. It doesn't have to be every little detail about Back to the Egg or London Town. But I mean, I think giving a really good, deep perspective, because the other day at work, funny enough, when I thought about it, 115 minutes, let's say 120 minutes, that means if we're going over the entire 10 years, you're going to get about maybe 10 to 12 minutes if we're lucky for each year from, let's say, 1970 or 71 to 1980 or
Yep.
79, depending on when you break it off. Do you consider the Japan tour a breaking off point, or do you consider Back to the Egg and the concerts, at the end of the year, the culmination? Either way, around that time period. So yeah, I mean, I would love to hear obviously more in the book, but I think for the documentary, they could easily go just a little bit deeper, give everybody a little bit of a taste. You get the new folks coming in, and as John Lennon once said with Double Fantasy around the time of his promotion, I'm singing to the people in my age group, but I hope the younger fans dig it. And I think they could very much do the same thing here. So that's kind of my thoughts. What are some of your thoughts? Like, how would you market it? How would you kind of go about that?
Yeah, because that's the thing. I mean, it depends on how young you want to go with this, because obviously, Gen X, we all know Wings, obviously first generation. But if you're going like the millennials downward, they're going to be less familiar. Now they'll know about Paul. I mean, I
Yeah.
think they'll at least know, who he is and so forth. But are they going to be necessarily familiar with Wings? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And so I think it's going. I think it's smart to, of course, do streaming. Because I just don't know, as great as this is, to have this documentary, I don't know if it would really attract huge in-person audiences. So, I know a lot of people have issues about streaming, and I do hope there's physical product at some point. I hope we get a DVD, Blu-ray, whatever. But you are going to reach more people via streaming, no doubt about it. So that's fine. But the question is going to be, is this going to be marketed as, okay, this is the story of, are they going to focus strictly on Paul? Because, Paul obviously in the 70s went through a huge transformation. We all know about this, splitting with the Beatles. He was depressed, finally, started to get his groove back with the McCartney album and so forth. Are they going to focus it on him? Kind of like, as you mentioned with Wingspan,
Yeah.
that it was Paul and Linda primarily, Are they going to go that route, or are they going to, and maybe they're fearing, well, this could potentially alienate younger audiences. Are they going to really dig deeper into the individual members of Wings? Now, we would love that. I mean, absolutely. I would love to hear more about, what the surviving members, what they have to say, and their perspectives. But I'm afraid that they may be relegated to just some sound bites. I hope not. I hope I'm wrong. Um, and not really hearing about what did they contribute to Wings. That kind of thing. Are they going to say, well, younger people don't want to hear about that? Well, I just think, but you can learn. I think I'd like to see it strike that balance. Therefore, for marketing,
Mhm.
you could then say, this is going to be the story of Wings, about their highs and their lows, and then and about the individuals that maybe don't get, well, not maybe, they don't get as much attention as Paul. So it's striking that balance.
Yeah.
So you're not alienating either side, and it's tough.
No, it is. It definitely is. No, you bring up some good points, especially the folks that either haven't been heard of, or I mean, my God, Wingspan next year is going to be 25 years, since Wingspan, which
Wow.
I can't believe it myself. So okay, we've had the Wingspan, and I thought, well, maybe there's something that's going to expand on that, and we've gotten the archives, of course, we've gotten the McCartney years video collection, everything, but you're right, striking that balance, and I mean, unfortunately, Denny's no longer here to tell his side of the story.
Yeah.
Henry McCulloch, other folks. I mean, we've still got a few of the folks, Lawrence Joubert, Steve Hawley, Denny Sywell, Jeff Britton. I feel like I may be missing somebody, but I think I've got everybody.
I think that's everybody.
I think so.
Well, and then you could get even deeper, like Howie Casey, who played during the Wings Over America and all tour. I mean, you could do some extensions there. Of him talking about Wings being on tour and all. Are they going to get that deep? I don't know. Not sure. I'd love it, but
me too. And again, I get they're trying to strike that balance. I understand that with that. With that balance, with that kind of give and take. But I mean, things like, okay, the 74, juniors farm sessions alone are interesting. I know have been covered in, Alan Cozen's book with the, with the McCartney, the McCartney series.
McCartney Legacy, yeah.
Mm-hmm. McCartney Legacy. Thank you. I was blanking on the title for some reason. See, I don't always get it right, folks. Believe me, there's so much out there. But, with the McCartney Legacy, I mean, you're just, how deep do you go? How much do you do for both? But I mean, things like that, or things like for us hardcore fans, okay, a little more about London Town, Back to the Egg, not just the normal Band of the Run, Wings Over America, Wings break up. And I know that was kind of part of the review. So how much do you let in? And also, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but I thought the review did bring up a good point, like letting you in a little bit more on Paul as a person. Not that we have to know every detail, but kind of like a little deeper look, especially for the younger fans coming up. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree, because this was a pivotal time in Paul's life, personally and creatively. As I mentioned before, the breakup of the Beatles, the depression he went through, then coming out of it, trying to find his sound, without being alone. Ram, I mean, I don't know if they're going to talk about how Ram has gone through reassessment. I sure hope so. And then finally reaching big commercial success with Band on the Run. And I mean, that's a journey that I think would be of interest to any age, saying, hey, here's an artist who, was going through a difficult personal time, turmoil, suing friends. And I mean, it was terrible. And, but then being able to rebuild his career and revive his creative spirit and everything, first completely alone, and then through Wings. I think that's in a way, it's a universal story of, you fall down, you get back up. So, I think that would have appeal, to a general audience. And then, of course, as time goes on, I mean, getting bigger and bigger, and then Back to the Egg. We've been mentioning Back to the Egg quite a bit. That was such a departure for him, and he, at the time, critics slammed him for it. That he was leaning a bit into the punk and new wave kind of genres
Well, so
that were
yeah,
popular.
that sounded. I mean, that's what was coming up. Pun sort of intended, coming up at the time, right? I mean, look, you're going to go with the trends as an artist. Also, the fact that Paul's now approaching 40, is approaching 30. We all have different decades, different seasons of our life.
Mhm.
And a changing music scene. I think a little bit of that would be interesting. I mean, personally, what I would like to see, I mean, again, I'll be happy to watch this. I hope I'm wrong as well. I pray that I'm wrong
Yep.
on this. I hope maybe something didn't, got lost in translation. But for my money, so to speak, I would even done a part two and a two-parter, like a two-part, streaming video going, okay, maybe this is like the theatrical cut. Now we're going to go into part 1, 70 to say 75, 76, part 2, 75 to 80, if we're going to cover just that Wings period. Really get the participants, really get, either archival footage from those that are not here, or even clips and input from the folks who are still here. I mean, I'm sure they've got plenty to offer. Even if it's an official sanctioned product, I know you're not going to do maybe the warts and all type of thing, but
Right.
even still, I mean, you have to address, there's certain things you have to address. The Japan bust, not the smartest move,
No, that's for sure.
I mean, much we love Paul, hey, that bringing a fist-sized chunk of substances into Japan at any point, I'm sure even now, probably not a smart idea.
No.
And voters lost money and everything. So, I mean, having to address that, and then in turn, okay, now we go into the solo years, the George Martin trilogy, Broad Street, shameless plug, that type of thing.
Yeah,
exactly. I think something like that, a very human story, like showing, okay, from this to this. I think that's a very, very good point.
Yeah, because it is. I mean, it is a human story, and I like the idea. I know they're not going to do it, but I like the idea of splitting it up like that because the early 70 to 75 was really the period where he was trying, as I said, trying to kind of find his sound. And he then gradually started getting the band together and everything, and how he evolved, as a solo artist for the first time in his life. And then the second part would be the peak of Wings, the tour, rock show, all that. And then the kind of 1-2 punch of Back to the Egg, much as we love it, at the time, it's, critics slammed him for it, and, and it didn't sell as well as previous albums, and then of course culminating in the bust. So it's I think that it would be an interesting way to split it up, so you could, as you said, go into more detail, talk to more people who are still with us, and I just think, now I'm sure, because we've seen a number of these projects now that do this, and I see why. They'll talk to some current artists and say how they were influenced by that, and that's okay. I mean, I don't mind that, because like Guns N' Roses covered "Live and Let Die," and others have Erykah Badu sampled "Arrow Through Me,"
Yes.
and there are other things you could discuss and have artists come on and say, this is how Wings influenced me. Because we all hear about how the Beatles influenced them. It'd be interesting to hear about what exactly Wings, how they, and Ram, of course, influenced a lot of people. So I don't have a problem with bringing modern artists there, as long as it's not the focus,
Right.
but it does sort of help tell the story of Wings' legacy and that kind of thing. So I'm not necessarily opposed to that, as long as it's not the central focus.
Yeah, no, that is a good idea, and I think I think back on the Linda Ronstadt documentary. Maybe we're not trying to go too off topic, but just as I'm thinking about this now, bringing in a little more modern artists or other artists, saying, okay, well, Bonnie Raitt said something along the lines, well, Linda Ronstadt at her peak was as popular as, let's say, Beyonce today. That type of comparison, going, okay, well, pick some of the bigger artists today, going, yeah, I'm influenced by by Wings. I think Harry Styles being among them, being a huge fan of, let's say, Back to the Egg, that type of thing, that kind of later, but that whole Wings sound, Ram with the sort of lo-fi, I guess, movement that's
indie,
yeah, the indie pop thing, yeah.
Yeah. And that would be a way, again, to bring in younger fans and they would say, wow, if Harry Styles likes them, maybe I better check them out. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm sure I came upon artists like that where I, watched some interview or something and they talked about an artist that really influenced them. I'll think, oh, I need to go check out that person. So if that happened, fantastic.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, will I look? Will we? I mean, for me, am I going to look forward to this? Of course, we'll look forward to getting the book, seeing the documentary. If there's a soundtrack, whatever, probably end up buying it for completeness sake. That's just
Of
me.
course. Yep.
I mean, maybe there you could include some deep cuts, and I kind of contrast this with as we mentioned, Power to the People. Now, okay, I know there's the one song we've all addressed in our individual shows, group shows, but
Yep.
putting that aside. Power to the People with a 9 CD set covering that period intensely. I mean, I look at it and then I look kind of where the McCartney archives have, let's say, stalled. I don't know if they're still going or not.
Yeah.
But I look at how much detail they do with these Lennon releases. I go, okay, this is the way to really get into it and deep into it. And I think just sort of contrasting that really like, okay, you have the casual fan, but really bringing people into the story and into chunks like that. I've often wondered, would that also work for, let's say, Paul, or like something to build upon this, in coming years? I mean, again, there's that. And there's also the fact that, you know, people are not, as much as I think Paul and Ringo will still be with us for a while, people are not going to always be around to tell their own stories. So there's kind of that double meaning. I don't know what your thoughts are kind of on that.
Yeah. Well, as far as the Power to the People set, it's very interesting because I mean, I think in many ways there's still that is appealing to the hardcore fan. Because I don't know if the average, and I'm saying just casual John
Mhm.
fan would even know that much about this album because it was a no-brainer to do that for Imagine. I mean, that was a no-brainer. That's a famous album. And even the Plastic Ono Band. I
Yeah.
think most people know about that album. But now we're getting into some that I don't know if younger fans would be as familiar with. And Sometime in New York City is definitely one of those albums. And it's, long not been considered one of his best. And, the politics of it. I mean,
Mhm.
I think there is going to be a book in the set that will explain the different things going on. Because, yeah, I mean, you would have to talk about what was going on in 72 and all, because they refer to a number of figures that, I think a younger person today wouldn't know who they were. Um, and then but then the thing that, us longtime fans are really excited about, of course, is the one-to-one concerts, excuse me, finally being released after, God, when was it that sometime in New York, sometime in New York City, it was 86, something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
You
it was 86 on CD, and I think I have a beta tape in my collection of VHS that it came out with the,
Yeah. Yeah. That's old school. Absolutely beta. Yeah. So that just shows you how
oh yeah.
long it's been. I mean, so we're excited about that. Um, should, should the Lennon estate and the record company be concerned about, oh, we need to appeal to younger fans too with this? I'm not so sure. Um,
Mhm.
because particularly the box set, maybe
Right.
maybe the 2 CD version. But the box set, I mean, I would argue that's for the hardcore fans. And thank God, I applaud the Lennon Estate for the box sets they've come out with because they are really detailed and good value, pretty good value for the money
Oh yeah.
until, this one's a little higher price, but some of the past ones have been very good value. Um, and I think those are definitely for the hardcore fans. Now, how this is going to sell, I don't know. It's definitely pushing that, this is completely remastered. And then for the film, eventually we're going to get, the afternoon and evening shows. So that makes all of us fans going like this, it's like,
Yeah.
yay, but I just don't know if the average, like the super casual fan to younger fans, are going to be
Mhm.
quite as excited about it. They'd really have to tailor the marketing to say, okay, this was this one period in John's life where he got very political. Here are some of the things that were going on. Like, you'd have to kind of provide a lot of background.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting point with the background, and especially kind of what you mentioned, and then even thinking back to again the McCartney film. Obviously, the anthology they're going to clean up. We've got a lot of things for both hardcore and we're casual fans and casual. I mean, for folks out there, look, casual fans, we're all fans. I get it. It's not
Yes.
hitting one against another, but it's more like again, how do you find that middle ground? And I thought your point about the background of the players, I think a little bit of that could be provided in Man on the Run, or could be provided in some sort of supplemental material. Kind of the background of what was going. Again, like as we discussed, what was going on in Paul's life at the time, what's going on in the music scene, what's going on a little bit, worldwide. Maybe not deep. We're not doing a history lesson, but I like that you mentioned that with the background players. I mean, Angela Davis, most people aren't going to quite know who that is unless you're reading a history book, or Jerry Rubin, the Yippie movement, I think.
Yep.
Those type of things. Really,
John
really
Sinclair, who's that?
John Sinclair, yeah.
I mean, we know, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if particularly on the younger side, they're not going to know, some of these people. And so, yeah, and I really think, I mean, I talk about this in the classes I teach and all that, understanding what was happening during, not only in that person's, in the artist's personal life, but even, in terms of history, in terms of what was going on in the news at the time and the mood of the country and all that. Those all play important parts in the creation process and heavily influence the material. And so I think you get a better understanding, and sometime in New York City, you really need to hear about this to enjoy it, to understand it. If you just go in cold and don't know anything about it and think, who are these people and why is he singing about I mean, you're not going to get anything out of it.
Yeah. Cold sometime New York City has got me on the run.
No.
I had to put that one in there. Come on, I'm full of silly jokes. But, that's an interesting point, especially I'll even we'll take it with Paul's career. Even musically, who's he competing with in the early 70s? You've got the singer-songwriter movement. Mid 70s, maybe arena rock, Led Zeppelin, things like that were on the scene. Later 70s, the Sex Pistols, the punk movement, who were supposed to sweep everybody away and down with the old guard. We're the new ones, even though they're much older themselves. That type of thing, which is interesting to see what is going on musically across the board as well.
Oh, hugely important. I mean, Good Night Tonight was basically disco. I mean, and disco was hot. I mean, that's the thing. So of course he would do that. And then, as you said, in the late 70s, punk and new wave were on the rise, and so he tried that with Back to the Egg. And and there are some songs that were big hits that really didn't sound like anything else on the charts at the time. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily think it would have been a hit as you look back. Some of those the hits he scored during the disco era, or I just think it's really interesting to see that. I mean, in fact, cheap plug on Talk More Talk, we had a show recently where we interviewed Luca Perassi, who did that wonderful book on Press to Play. Highly recommended. And one of the important things in understanding that album is learning about what was he going through at the time. He was trying, it was the mid 80s. He was trying to figure out where he fit in the musical landscape. It was changing. And so that heavily inspired him on Press to Play. He was also, of course, going through, I hate to say it, but, the commercial disappointment of Broad Street. He was still smarting from that. So, he was looking for kind of a comeback, a big hit, and thinking, oh, how am I going to fit in? And Spies Like Us was sort of the dipping the toe in the water of this new sound, and he did well. So, then came Press to Play, and I just think all of that is really crucial to understanding, where his head was during the making of that, and that he was under pressure and the whole thing. I think it just enhances your understanding and enjoyment of the material.
Yeah, no, agreed. Hey, Broad Street was not a commercial success as much as I love the film. It's my passion project for some reason. But
Yeah, no, no.
No More Lonely Nights, notwithstanding, that's the silver lining. But the film, doesn't make as much. $9 million budget, 1.5 million opening weekend. That's not making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And you're right. At that point, on the new album, he's got Phil Collins, he's got Carlos Alomar, he's got Hugh Padgham, I think is how you pronounce his name. And like, okay, yeah, you're right. How do I fit into that sound? What else is going on? Peter Gabriel's releasing So, which is a massive success.
Right.
Wang Chung is on the radio.
Yep.
You've got all these different, artists, sort of the newer sound coming in. That is interesting. And that's I think that's a little bit, it sounds like that's what's might be lacking with Man on the Run. But again, I know we haven't seen it yet. So I'm trying to keep an open mind. With my whole thought process is let's try to keep an open mind. But if it's anything, like I said, based on that interview that was posted, or not that interview, excuse me, that review, I'm like, oh, why am I getting Wingspan 2.0 from this?
Right. That's how I feel as well. And I just think, I just think it is possible to put together a documentary that can appeal to both sides. I mean, I was thinking back to my reaction to 8 Days a Week, from 2016. I mean, it was fine. It was a, nice film. It was enjoyable. I mean, it was fine. But I had really hoped that they were going to show some, deeper archive material. I mean, I think the word had been around that, Ron Howard and all were looking for fans who had any kind of video from, Super 8 or something from past concerts. They wanted to hear, talk to them and on. I thought, oh, great. We're going to really get more of an inside look at those touring years. And then the movie came out.
and I own it. I own it. Bought the soundtrack.
Yeah, I have it too. Absolutely. It's fine.
They left Ronnie Spector out of the film, out of at least that cut, the theatrical cut, which I thought was a big mistake, at least in my view.
Absolutely.
She's an inside perspective.
Yep, absolutely. And so, but it tended to be kind of a rehash of what we've heard before. So, but again, they obviously were trying to appeal to a big variety of fans. And so, but I still think they could have thrown us a couple of bones, as I said, have some commentary from, the opening acts that, during the tour. I mean, would have loved that. Those who are still with us to hear talk about, hey, I'm opening for the Beatles. I'm coming on stage and, the crowd is just huge, and what that felt like and what it was like to be on, tour with them. Hey, sign me up. I would love that. But as I recall, they didn't really have anything like that. It was just kind of the same old stuff about how Beatlemania happened and all that. And it just, so I'm hoping that Man on the Run isn't going to be kind of like that. I hope not, but we will find out soon.
I know we have yet to see that. I mean, but then also now this prompts me with another thought with, okay, the Get Back documentary with Peter Jackson. Now what I consider, besides Anthology, now what I consider the gold standard, no, scratch that, the platinum standard of documentaries. The rhodium standard. There you go. Even rarer material that Paul has in its collection for Guinness Book of World Records. So the rhodium. Now, and that kind of helps to change the narrative about, let's say, Yoko's role, how the breakup happened. So I often wonder, Man on the Run. Maybe I would love to see a deeper dive. I know that probably won't happen, but I often wonder something like that. Could something like that also just change a little bit of the perception? Oh, I never listened to anything after Band on the Run or Wings Over America, that type of thing.
Yeah,
I mean it seems like a little bit of a lost opportunity. I'm not sure how you feel about that. But
yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I mean, again, if part of what they want to do is appeal to casual fans and maybe younger fans who don't know anything about Wings, yeah, I mean, I think it would be great to inspire them to go back and listen to the lesser known albums, London Town or something. Yes. I mean, I'm sure if you ask the average person on the street, can you name a Wings album? It's going to be Band on the Run. I mean, that's it. And wonderful album. I'm not putting it down. I mean, and it was hugely popular. I mean, and it is a great album. But I think it would be great if this documentary could go more into the lesser known ones that maybe weren't as big hits and inspire people to check them out. I just wanted to go back for a second to the Get Back documentary that you mentioned, because this is that's a very interesting case, because that was really, I think, appealing mainly to hardcore, because for the length of it, they did have, which was good, they did have the sort of the narrative, the captions, whatever, on the screen saying this period, this happened. So it was kind of a frame, a time frame they were giving you. And also, which wasn't quite as they described in the trailer. I remember the original trailer, they framed it as the Beatles going into, they only had this much time to produce this many songs, and they came in and, really with nothing, and they had to build it from scratch, and they were under this pressure. It wasn't quite like that. I don't think it wasn't like quite that much of a time crunch, but I get it. They're trying to have a story here.
Of course,
I understand.
Yeah.
Yep. But I mean, that was really, though, and as we know now, Peter Jackson is a hardcore fan too. I mean, the moments, so many moments in that film that I was geeking out over. I mean, like the conversation with Paul and John in the cafeteria and that kind of thing. I don't know. And again, I'm not putting down average fans. We're not in any way dismissing that or anything. Are they going to care necessarily about that part? I don't know. It's kind of a question, but for us, and I don't know what the streaming numbers were with Get Back, but I assume it was successful. I mean, I don't know.
Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah,
that's the whole thing with the remastered, the issued anthology. Mm-hmm. Certainly, but it's interesting you bring that up, because I can bring up my own folks, my dad and my stepmom. So they end up watching it, but they're much more casual fans, right?
Yeah,
so
mine too.
Certainly not putting them down. They watch our respective channels, stuff online, everything like that.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And one of their comments, I forget who it was, one of them was like, but it was a bit too much for me. You're going way into the weeds. So I understand there's that balance too. On the reverse side, you're going into the recording and all this deep detail, whereas again, I think, doing maybe a theatrical cut and a much deeper cut, can work too. Extended cut, whatever you want to call it. Ideally with that happen, sure. Mm-hmm. But that is interesting. I don't know. I mean, how I am curious. So how did your folks sort of have the same reaction, or was it
Yeah, I mean, they watch some. I don't think they actually watched Get Back with me, because they were kind of like, "Whoa, that's too many hours." Yeah, and I get it, but they enjoyed, like, when Beatles 64 came out earlier this year. Now I was sitting there like, "Oh God, the same stuff. There's nothing that new here," and all. They loved it.
Yeah.
And now part of it was, of course, they were around in 64, so some of it probably brought back memories for them and everything. But it was hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it was, something like that. And they enjoyed it. And I'm sitting there, they probably thought, "Oh my God, shut up." Because I'd be like, "Well, that really glosses over this area,"
I'm sorry for cracking up at that, but yeah, I think my folks will be the same thing. Sometimes even one of them tried to watch Broad Street online unofficially. They're going, "I'm glad you like the film, because I'm not as much of a fan." It's like, I get it,
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
When we're approaching this, folks out there, we get it, we understand, but again, a bit more than just the surface, I think, is really, some of what I think what we're saying.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting idea to have for the Man on the Run, to have, like, if they wanted to do a theatrical version, then I can understand why they'd want to keep that more general. Again, trying to bring in as many people as possible. But then the extended cut would definitely throw us a bone, and get into deeper into the weeds, as you said. And so that'd be another way that this could be, handled to make everybody happy. But
Yep.
I don't know. But one thing though that Get Back really proved is that, people complain about streaming and saying, well, but I want the physical product and all. And yes, I do too. But I think streaming, though, has provided a valuable platform for these filmmakers to do these kind of niche films like Get Back. That was never going to be released in theaters. I mean, no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Partially because of the length, and obviously, and partially they might say, I don't think enough, they'd get enough crowds that way. But putting it on Disney Plus, he could expand it greatly, and and of course people watch it on their own time and from anywhere, and he had more freedom than he would have in a traditional theatrical film. So that's the nice thing
Mhm.
about streaming, that you can do these different kind of documentaries that may not necessarily have the greatest mass appeal.
Yeah,
Uh,
that is a good point. I mean, for my money, well, I mean, I'm glad that also did get a physical release. And that's what I would
yes,
ideally would love to see. Ideally we get something like you said later on. Okay, it's had a streaming run, blah blah blah. Okay, X number of months later, hey, guess what? We'll release something physical.
right. That's fine. Mhm.
Yeah. But yeah, that is a good pointer, especially for more, independent films, things like that. I totally get it. Or even some music documentaries out there, I'm thinking things like 20 Feet from Stardom, things
Oh
like that,
yeah.
where it's much more of a niche, like, an artist you've never heard of, they suddenly get this cult mass appeal, years after they've passed, whatever the case might be.
Hmm.
Um, no, certainly. Certainly. I mean, that's very, very valid points. And, I'm myself not anti-streaming. I think I'm just more like, let's stream and let's have our cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
Let's have.
Oh, I agree. I agree. I mean, I have the physical copies Get Back and all that. I definitely wanted that. And so yes, I would say fine. You can premiere it on streaming. You can have it exclusively on streaming for a while, and then put out the Blu-ray, DVD, whatever, so that those that want a physical copy, because the other one problem with streaming, of course, is you say you think, okay, I can't afford Disney Plus anymore, or I'm just not getting enough out of it, I'm going to cancel it. Well, there goes your access to the film.
Right. Yeah.
So that's where the physical product is obviously
Yeah,
very
it's digital rights. Yeah, digital rights management, which is fancy word for we own it, you don't. So
Mhm.
that's where I kind of fall a bit on that. On
Exactly.
that. But I mean, I think the other thing too is with with a more casual documentary, like let's say like 8 days a week. How often have you watched it in the ensuing years? I haven't really
Mhm.
touched it. It's part of the archives. It's in my vast vault of archives.
Yep, me too.
But how often do you go back to it? And I think that's sort of a return on investment, if you will.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I agree. I wouldn't go back. And Beatles 64. I don't think I would go back and watch that multiple times. But I was just thinking though, when and I'm sure you would have a similar story, but when I really started getting into the Beatles in the mid 80s,
Mhm.
the big documentary then was Complete Beatles.
Yes.
And I still champion that film, because yeah, it was kind of bullet points, but it did a great job of giving you the basic story. And of course it's wonderful to have, because they interviewed Mimi and so many
Yeah.
that Jerry Marsden and that aren't with us anymore, so we've got that. But I wish they would put that back into circulation, because I just thought, I remember as a kid watching that multiple times,
Oh yeah.
and just loved it, and it made me want to get dive even more into their catalog and their history and that kind of thing. So a film can really do that if it's done well. But I think, as I said, I think hardcore fans probably appreciated that too, because as I said, they interviewed Mimi and some pretty important figures in
Oh yeah.
Beatles history.
Yeah, and that's part of the story. That is definitely, part of the again, Denny Lane, major part of the story, and it's part of it. Yeah, I got to meet him, see him, get his autograph, which was very cool. We miss him, but a very, very, he's part of the main three throughout the entire 70s. Other folks that came and went, or even if they have some archival footage, and again, that's where they could really insert this here. Hopefully, and we have to see. Versus, again, versus just, Paul's story just kind of goes, Wingspan just goes 70 to 80, just the very basic points. And maybe they got a 1 or 2 second clip of each person.
I hope that doesn't happen. And by the way, when I mentioned earlier, and you did too, about Wingspan mainly focusing on Paul and Linda, that's an important part of the Wings story. I don't want them to skip over that. I mean, Linda had a big impact on that band, and I think it's important to explore that, and so I'm not saying, okay, let's go completely the opposite direction in Wingspan and de-emphasize that. No, it's okay. You do need to talk about that. As I said, she had a big impact.
Oh God, yeah, she's the love of Paul's life. Of course, you can't. That is like having a Beatles doc without John. You can't do it. There is no way to do it.
Exactly. And it's also kind of another, very human story about, when she first got up on stage with them, and, it didn't go well at first. I mean, she was terrified, and the, audience didn't like her, and, and she really grew as time went on. And I mean, many people, I don't know if I would have gotten back up there after that, and I said, what?
Yeah. Have fun, do your thing.
Yeah, do your thing. I'm gonna, focus on other stuff. But no, she didn't. I mean, she kept going and had to develop a tough hide, and and she got better, as time went on. And those harmonies they did, I hope they'll talk about that. She was great at harmonizing with him.
Oh yeah, 100%. And no, I mean, I think building on that is more even my point. But yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a very important part of it. Going even deeper. I'm hoping. I think the photo they've shown, at least the photo I've seen online, the one with her and Paul. I don't know if I've seen that one before. Maybe it's been around and I haven't paid attention to it. But also, rare photos, rare videos, things like that. Stuff that I haven't quite gotten before. All these places, the Lennon Estate, the Beatles, Apple, MPO, all these different places, the Harrison Estate, Ringo, I'm sure to some extent, all these archives that they have, all this material, all this wealth of pictures, of video, of things that I'm hoping don't get lost to time. And I think that's another aspect of it.
That's a good point, because, and I think for a while, because I remember talking about Anthology again, when those CDs came out, I remember reading an interview with George Martin, because of course he oversaw, a lot of that. And he actually said, I don't understand why fans want to hear these outtakes and that kind of stuff, because they weren't perfect. And, he said, I would rather just hear the final versions. And so I think there was a reluctance for a while from Apple to release that kind of stuff, to the outtakes and that kind of thing. I mean, of course, we got them from Dutch imports, but but officially it didn't happen until 95. But I just thought that was like, wow, that's kind of a disconnect there, that they're like, why would fans want to hear this? Well, yeah, because it's history. It's I love hearing how a song comes together, no pun intended, and well, maybe a little intended, and but I love hearing that, how a song develops, and all. So what if their vocals aren't perfect and all? It's an outtake. We know that.
Well, I mean, and here we're going to go down another little rabbit hole real quick, as we're sort of, as we're sort of near to wrapping things up, I think. But with here was another one that we would have gotten 10 years earlier. I don't think a lot of people quite remember this. The Aborted Sessions album, 1985.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Announced close to there was an announcement something was officially going to be released around fall of 85. They withdrew that. They're like, no, that's not coming out. I mean, that alone,
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I didn't remember it from the time, because, as I said, by that time I was just starting to get into the Beatles, but I found out about it later. And yeah, isn't that interesting? that,
It-
that was suddenly gone. I mean, that they pulled it. Well, look at the whole thing about the Hamburg tapes, and
oh, the
now
Dark
people,
One, yeah, of
yep,
course.
where that was pulled off the market and all, and Peter Jackson, I'm hoping, is maybe convincing the surviving members and the estates of the other Beatles to that he could clean it up and release it. But I know George Harrison was really against it. I mean, he just really thought they sounded, it was a terrible, quality recording. Yeah, it wasn't great. I will admit that. It's, the sound wasn't great. But again, it was like the only, recording though of, showing you what they were like in their early years, like their earliest years. They were on the verge of stardom when they played those Star Club dates. But it's that kind of wild, raw Beatles that, was kind of lost as time went on. Yeah, I mean, when I first found, a Dutch import of them, I mean, I was thrilled. I just thought, okay, yeah, this is crappy quality recording, no doubt about it. But, to hear George Harrison doing that, I call it the Peter guns, a guitar solo,
Yeah,
and I saw her standing there, things like that. I mean, great stuff. And boy, they fought that for years to let
oh
that
yeah.
stuff get out.
Oh, of course, and it's about it's about preserving that history and preserving that for future generations, and at least cleaning it up, whether it gets an external release or not. I get the weird feeling they're probably still working on it behind the scenes, but like I said, whether it gets released or not, as we know, one of the estates says no.
Mhm.
Carnival of Light being the example, but at this point, Carnival of Light. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I would be missing too much. I don't know, but I'm not as upset maybe, but
I'm not.
but again, yeah, but it's just like that type of thing. If one of the estates or one of the folks says no,
That's
that's
it.
it, at least as far as the Beatles go.
Yeah, exactly.
That is interesting. That is interesting with the Martin quote. Yeah, because they were so close to it too. I wonder
Mhm.
if that plays an impact on it. Whereas we're seeing it as fans, they're seeing it as, okay, it was just my work day and I went in. Here's the finished product. Good enough.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I guess if you look at it from their perspective, okay, I did an outtake and I screwed up the lyrics or my voice cracked or something like that. Would I want the whole world to hear that? I don't know. I can see both sides, but enough time has elapsed that you know I think fans love to hear it because again, it's fascinating. It's a hearing how a song is developed. And I think artists and producers probably are more like, I only want the public to hear the final perfect version, that shows us at our best.
Right.
But that's not how we're looking at it. As I said, I look at it as, I'm learning about the creation of Strawberry Fields. They changed the tempo or they different lyrics, things like that. I love that stuff. And so do many fans.
Of
So,
course.
mhm.
And I think we can all agree we all have the love for the Beatles, for the solo years, for different things. And yeah, especially that Strawberry Fields. I remember reading about that. And then when I finally heard where they made the cut in the edit, or like, whoa, wait a minute, okay.
Mhm.
And again, this is back in the 90s, as we're both Gen X kind of going, okay, wow, I'm reading about this in a
Mhm.
book. Unlike online today, we have instant access within 5 seconds of
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Definitely
You
not
know,
the way it was back in the day. Yeah.
no, not for certain. And I think that's why try to go into it with an open mind. But yeah, but you know what? A little more stuff for hardcore fans, we would appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. And believe me, we'll watch it, we'll buy the physical product, we'll buy the CDs and all that. I mean, so if you could do that, give us some material. I mean, you will be, if we want to look at it in cold hard cash terms,
Yeah,
we'll buy it. You know,
yeah,
you'll
of course.
you'll you'll reach us for sure.
I'll try to reach Paul later on the Broad Street phone I have. With the
Cool.
red phone. Yeah, exactly. Going, hey, Paul, guess what? Those missing tapes. I think there was a movie about that somewhere. Oh my goodness. Well, as we're sort of wrapping up, I just wanted to ask: do you have any like final points to add or final thoughts to add before we sort of wrap things up?
Yeah, I think just that maybe the anthology can be used as kind of a model for a documentary that appeals to both the casual fan and hardcore fan, and look how well that did. So I think, it's very possible to do that, and fine that you want to attract newer fans. I understand that. I mean, Complete Beatles did that for me, but don't forget us. Don't overlook us hardcore fans that want to get into the weeds, and also, if you can, as I said, just throw in some lesser known, rare photos or stories we haven't heard before. Doesn't have to be the whole focus, but it should, at least there should be some parts in there that appeal to us as well. You want to reach a big audience, that's the way to do it.
So all we were saying is give hardcore fans a chance.
That's right.
Well, I just want to wrap up with Kit. Of course, if you've been on the show before, you're welcome back anytime. Of course, it's always fun being able to talk here on the show and outside of the show as well. So just to plug things and everything like that, since this is airing mid-September, just want to see, first of all, if you have any either where people can find you, if you have any upcoming events, anything like that.
Sure. Okay. Well, of course, you can find me at kiddotools.com. You can also find me on Facebook. My author page is Kiddo Tools Keynotes, so you can look it up that way as well. We, of course, Talk More Talk. We've had a couple of great episodes recently where we talked to Gary Van Sciac and Luca Perassi. And so do check those out. We're coming out with new episodes soon, so be on the lookout for that. And Toppermost of the Poppermost, we are putting out new episodes. The easiest way to find all of our past episodes and the new one is to go to toppermostofthepoppermost.net. All the episodes are there, links to them, and I think you'll enjoy. We do dig into the weeds on that show, so I think you'll enjoy it. I'm teaching classes now. When this is coming out, I'll already be in the midst of Disco Inferno Part 1, but Disco Inferno Part 2 will be in December. December 11th will be the first date. I'm going through the history of the genre, working on my lessons as we speak. So really looking forward to that. You can find more information on registering on my Facebook page. And I hope to see many of you at Ken Womack's Rubber Soul Conference, which is coming up in November. I don't think the schedule is out as of this recording, but you can go to the website. It's Everything Fab 4 Fest. Is the name of it. So you can just search that, and the information should be there soon. So I'll be there and really looking forward to it.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to link to everything below, of course, in the comments. And yeah, you know what? Feel free to leave comments, whether you agree, whether you disagree. I always love hearing, the comments and everything, of course, whether, what your take is on it, somewhere in the middle, has Mr. Broadstreet finally gone off the rails? Who knows? But, it wouldn't be the first time I've heard that, but but all in fun. It's all in fun. It's all that we love. We all have a love for this Beatles, for the solo Beatles.
We're all fans, absolutely.
We are all fans. That is the most important thing. But Kit, I just want to say thank you again for coming on. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I will see everybody in the next video. Kit, thank you so much, everybody. Have a great one, and see you next time.
Thanks, Ed. Peace and love.
Peace and love.